Welcome. Let's talk a little bit about what this channel is going to evolve into. I've been away for a while. I did some series about Cheat Engine, things like that, and I'd like to come back and start making more videos, but it's going to be in a much different context. So, what this channel is essentially going to be is a brain slash data dump of all the things that I know regarding anything related to technology. So it's going to run the gamut from, hey, let's explore assembly, to, hey, let's explore Django web servers and Ajax and REST and things like that. And I'm very interested in all of those things and everything in between. So one of the problems I ran into with the previous series was that I wanted to explain concepts in a certain way, in the way that I saw them in my head, but I was unable to because I have no way of knowing what the end viewer sort of background was. So in the context of like a Cheat Engine series or something like that, it makes a lot of sense to reference the way that programs are constructed from a source code level. So if you are familiar with classes and objects and things like that, and routines and recursion and stuff like that, then Cheat Engine and modifying memory addresses makes a lot more sense to you than it does if you're not familiar with those sorts of topics. So I constantly ran into problems where I would be in the middle of a video or thinking about a video or what have you, and I would want to say something, but I couldn't say it because the context would force me to diverge into a completely different topic, because that's just the way that technology is. It's so built up and so layered and so complex nowadays that it's almost impossible for you to talk about one thing without referring to another thing, which refers to another thing, and so it just sort of builds into this like voodoo layer of ridiculousness. And I ran into that a lot when I tried to do the Cheat Engine series, and there's no remedy to that. There's no way that you can have people know all the things they need to know for Cheat Engine or assembly or pseudo assembly or C code or Django or whatever to make sense. There's always going to be realms or different domains that they're not familiar with, where if they were familiar with that domain, then things would make a lot more sense. So I'm kind of slightly abandoning that like structured level, I think. And what I'm going to move more towards is just kind of a, like I said earlier, sort of a brain dump, data dump sort of format. And I'll structure the playlists if I notice the topics emerge. I'll structure the playlist accordingly, and can certainly insert videos here and there to sort of like fit in the gaps. But I love talking about technology, and I love talking about things that I feel like I know about. And one of the reasons why I love talking about it is not to hear my own voice, but it's to inform other people and to try and get that light bulb to go off in their head. When I was in college, their professors would hit me with the same idea 5 times, and I wouldn't understand it, and I'd struggle through it, and then they would present it to me in a certain way, and all of a sudden that light bulb would go off, and I would understand everything and all the stuff they were trying to teach me. And those light bulb moments are perspective changing. They shift your entire understanding of everything around you, and is certainly in the context of whatever subject you're studying. So whether it be it technology, biology, molecular biology, astrophysics, or whatever, when that light bulb goes off, it is a fundamental shift in the way that you understand the things that you are trying to look at or study. And people who can make that light bulb go off for myself are some of the most revered people that I look back on, and like, that person made a huge change in my life. And maybe we can walk through all the stuff, and I can do a data dump and a brain dump, and maybe the light bulb will go off for you from time to time. And sort of as a follow on from that, people, I maybe got a little bit of shit from time to time about why I'm so pedantic and why do I talk about the same thing in 5 different ways. And it's that's the exact reason, is I want that light bulb to go off, and it's never going to go off the same. It's not going to go off in the same way for all people. You have to present the same idea in different ways to different people in order to capture the largest amount of sort of people that will understand that idea. And that's what I love doing. That I think that's what the power of YouTube is you can just sort of explain ideas in different ways. And if you don't like it from one perspective, you can go to another channel and they explain it in a different perspective. And maybe I'm guilty of trying to explain it to all people at once. That's not me. That's not an ego thing. That's just sort of a facet of my personality. So hopefully we can move in that direction. We can explore a ton of different ideas, and it'll make sense to everybody, or at least certainly the most amount of people possible. So that being said, again, just sort of a summary recap. This channel is going to be a brain dump, a data dump. I'm going to start with a couple ideas that I think are sort of like form some fundamental groundwork. There is going to be some structure to it. It's not going to be completely free form and crazy and stuff like that, but it's definitely going to be sort of off the cuff, and I'll generate the playlist and stuff as we go. But I think that the next thing I would like to at least get into, before we even talk about like hardware and computers and OSs and things like that, I'd like to talk about like how to build a development environment, because we're going to be doing development. I'm going to choose the language of Python just because I happens to be the language I'm most comfortable with, and it's a generally accessible language. The indentation makes it nice and readable. And if you're not familiar with Python, we'll certainly cover that, and you'll be readily familiar with Python in the next as we go through the series. Your familiarity will grow, certainly, because we're going to use that as our language of choice. And so basically, we'll kind of work through like setting up a development environment, and we'll split across different environments. So what I mean by that is that setting up a development environment for Python on Linux is massively different than what it's like setting it up on Windows. And that's not an accident. And I also feel like that is a perfect starting point for how to look at the same hardware from a different perspective. So again, if I may, installing Linux on a Core 2 Duo with 4 gigs of RAM versus installing Windows on a Core 2 Duo with 4 gigs of RAM, you're going to get 2 completely different environments. And if you wanted to set up a development environment on both because you wanted to learn how to program, be it Python, Ruby, Java, assembly, or what have you, there's a whole different series of hoops you have to jump through. And so I feel like that's a good starting point for articulating the differences between different operating systems, and even though they run on the same hardware. So I think that that is possibly the tack that I will take in the next video, and we'll sort of pick up from there. But hopefully you find the this sort of new format informative, and certainly send me suggestions or anything like that, and we can obviously I can incorporate them. And in case you didn't notice, this is somewhat informal. I have a script, but I'm not reading the script per se, because obviously you can tell by the ums and stuff like that. I just like to talk, and again, it's not because I like to hear myself talk, it's just because this is my preferred method of information divulgence, if you will. So hopefully you enjoy it, hopefully you learn something, hopefully a light bulb or two goes off, and I look forward to any feedback that you may have.